A lot of our growing community is interested in how they upskill themselves. Where can they find opportunity across tech to be like, this is the next hot thing, this is where I put my eggs into, and where do they go to upskill themselves, to position themselves to, lead within the organization and build this aspect of entrepreneurial skills as they put it?
Uh, Google it. That's
So wait, you generally just like Google whatever you want to search, and then you just like take a training on it, and that's it.
seriously Google it. Google it. Like Google what you want to do. Google the stuff you're interested in, and Google will do a great job challenging you through the proper areas of interest.
Greg, I would love to welcome you and thank you so much for taking time to join me over here at the Rozy Effect.
Thank you, Rosie. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm honored by your invitation too.
I love it. Okay, now I have to hit on it because I see it back there. You just got LinkedIn Top Voices. It's a huge deal, so congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome. But you
I
got
thought
it.
you'd never ask.
Well, gosh darn. But listen, this is the exciting part. You got it in tech, right? And so you clearly have been around the block when it comes to technology, data science, AI. I currently work within the sales and strategy side of the business when it comes to AI and data science. Why don't you share with me where your journey begun when we talk about your journey into technology? And then why should we really be paying attention? Why should we care about where data science is going, where AI is going? What is all that about?
Yeah. So basically, at the foundation of it all is something that's existed for centuries, if not, more. Is math, right? So your interest in math and sciences is what drives what you're seeing today. It's just a buzzword, if you ask me, and I'm only exploring the tip of the iceberg. And for me, it wouldn't be fair to call myself somebody who's been deep into the whole AI thing. I'm a learner. I'm a learner of life. I'm a learner of new knowledge. And that's what drives me. So where it began, to answer your question, um, from my desire since I was in college to be an industrial engineer, because I was fascinated by um, scalable production of a set of products with little variation, right? So if you want to produce tennis shoes, how do you do that consistently the same way, and how you scale it to distribute to so many people? So industrial engineering was the one that really got me interested into figuring out what does it take. So when you think about optimization of systems, simulation of systems, reliability. There's a lot of math. There's some stats in there, even though I didn't really like it. Probabilities and things like that. Those are my weakness, by the way. I'm not too good at this. However, stats and probabilities are probably one of the key engines that powers things, AI and things like that. But math, I was good with, and I did well in college. I studied industrial engineering, and I have a master's in engineering management. My concentration was around supply chain management, and it was half supply chain and half business management. So it was great. I had fun. The only thing I lacked was to take that, those mathematical concepts and connect it to the real world. So, which is, the first connection that I really made was, yes, of course, at school you get some practice, you business cases, you study, but I feel like it's different when you enter the workforce and clearly work for it, for at the job. So this is what I've been doing when I entered the workforce, which was, in manufacturing, um, dealing with, supply chain or quality engineering, safety engineering, operations management throughout my career. And then until I was a product manager, and then I ended up with Amazon, working for a technology company. So my journey really, you could say that has been centered around math, pretty much it.
You mentioned something that I think might be interesting. I'm actually intrigued about. So, in terms of supply chain, you're quite versed in what that process looks like, and especially delivering on products that doesn't have a lot of change, right? That's what I'm understanding from what you're sharing with
A lot
me.
of variations, yeah.
A lot of
Yeah.
variation to it. So the pandemic hit, right? From tissue paper to toilet paper to hand sanitizer, all those things, it was like a gold, right, for us to be able to access it. And so I wonder where in the supply chain did the problem occur, and is because I don't think at the manufacturer there was necessarily like a shortage of production. So why do you think that occurred? And moving forward, how can even an individual that might not be running an organization, whatever it might be, can be thinking about how do I set myself up to not, lack the basic necessities?
Yeah. So I think it remains a game between supply and demand, right? And one of the things to create balance between supply and demand is capacity. If demand gets to a point where it's too high, then your capacity will determine whether you'll be able to supply on time with the surge of demand, right? Capacity is one of the components. And then there's what you call the bullwhip effect, right? So if you have a surge in demand, then your capacity takes a hit at the production level, but also at the raw material level, you're going to see the bullwhip effect, where it's a lagging effect where you see your capacity go way up at the production level because a lot of demand out there, where you're at the store, you're pulling off all of this paper. Then your factories will go, hey, we need to produce more, we need to produce faster, but wait a second, we don't have enough raw materials back there, so we need to order more. By ordering more, then the manufacturers of that base paper also see an increase, which is what you call the bullwhip effect. It goes backwards, 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 all the way to that source that makes the paper itself, which is wood.
Okay. So what are you trying to tell me was that we needed to, that like side of the business needed to double down and get the raw materials, double up on the raw materials in order to feed
Yeah.
the supply chain.
In other words, we're limited by our capacity. So how fast can you deliver, right? How fast can manufacturing place adapt to that surge in demand? So you're only limited to the capacity that you can put out. So say, for example, you are constantly or consistently selling, say, 2 tons of toilet paper over the past year, and then all of a sudden, over the past years, every year you sell 2 tons of paper. Then just this year, in February, March, you saw the demand go up by 2 tons. So which means you're about to produce a year's worth of products through your machine. Your machine can only run so fast. So you're limited by the capacity to fulfill that. So there's really nothing you could have done. Really, that's what I'm trying to say. You're limited by what you can put out. Because your machines have speed, your machine have only a certain amount of way to crank it up and produce and supply, right? So there are so many constraints. Now you have transportation constraints, right? You can only ship from this location to that location, the routes it takes to fulfill those networks, time, capacity. All of these are effects that um, uh, all of these are things that are affected by surges in demand.
Now that you've come into tech, you're seeing opportunity on how it's can be well positioned to serve the customer at such a greater scale. Putting you on the spot, how would you have gone about it, right? If you were in charge of this supply chain, let's say it was, a lateral organization that owned the supply chain from raw materials to the end consumer, what would you have done differently to, minimize the hit or the lack of thereof for your customer?
To tell you the truth, nothing. Because
Really?
yeah, because it's not something people could have predicted, right? But the question is, what do I do going forward with that event? How do I learn from this event to set myself up a little bit better for the future? So it's kind of like, what were the signals that announced a surge in that demand, right? So something like a pandemic, how can I leverage, that experience with the pandemic, which was the signal for people to start asking for more demand, right? Surging the demand. So if you think about it, is my capacity to tap into everything around that demand, everything that caused that surge in demand, to be able to analyze those signals is what I would do going forward. But since I didn't know that pandemic was coming, I would have done nothing. I would have done everything what everybody did, which was trying to catch up. But going forward, I would say, okay, now that I understand how a pandemic can affect certain materials, how do I set myself up to better position myself? So, for example, the next pandemic, the first few articles that come out, I better analyze this to position myself to see, okay, is this going to be a COVID-19 type pandemic? And what can I put? How can I position myself to, serve my customers based on that potential impact of that COVID-19 type pandemic that's coming, based on, different signals that I'm receiving. And they could come from all sorts of channels. So you really have to go outside of your own realm. You have to really tap outside, go out to the media, go out to research papers and things like that, trying to listen to what's happening out there so you can position yourself better for the future.
So in with data science and AI, in my current role, what I realize is a lot of customers actually are not they're not taking advantage of data science even in like the slightest capacity that we think they are, especially being in tech. I feel like us when we're in these tech companies, we're running this crazy race, which is amazing because we're always bringing out new exciting things and all of that. But when we look at the customer and we look at the way they're running their business, customers are generating millions of dollars of revenue, running it on Excel, running it on, other basic things where it's like you're not even leveraging data to really understand your customer at the core and position yourself to thrive. Are you seeing that? And how would you advise either an entrepreneur going into the business to find an opportunity, or a business leader to think about how they can utilize their data to be well positioned to actually survive moving forward?
I think it's not as simple as it sounds, but it's a constant exercise with understanding what your customer wants and understanding what you're here for. What is your product for in the first place? And making sure that you're gathering enough data from based on what your customer is telling you. So what I'm trying to say is the best thing is to you build a product, but also make sure you establish the connection line between you and the people using that product. Once you establish that communication line, you can tap into it and listen to their voice and really hear about what would make that product better, or hear about what makes the product not good. And all of this is gold information, golden data that helps you increase, the capability of your product, or, improve the feature of that product. So basically, you stay at the front end, set up those communication channels, making sure you have that feedback loop, and making sure that you're promoting this culture of, iteration, because you never want to think that the product that you put out today is what will remain 5 years from now. It evolves because customers' demands, customers' requests, they evolve too. And your product have to evolve with it.
I see that you invest a lot into upskilling. I follow you on LinkedIn. I be creeping on the little things you're posting, even though I'm not that deep into the maths, but I'm like, I get the concept. Um, and a lot of our growing community is interested in how they upskill themselves. Where can they find opportunity across tech to be like, this is the next hot thing, this is where I put my eggs into, and where do they go to upskill themselves, to position themselves to, lead within the organization and build this aspect of entrepreneurial skills, as they put it?
Uh, Google it. That's
So wait, you generally just like Google whatever you want to search, and then you just like take a training on it, and that's it?
seriously, Google it. Google it. Like Google what you want to do. Google the stuff you're interested in, and Google will do a great job challenging you through the proper areas of interest. Because a lot of people that's what sometimes I wonder, how can some folks make tons of money by what they say when Google can give it to you for free sometimes, right? So Google will give you a lot of the things. So you could
Yeah.
type something like, how can I be the best scientist in blah, blah, blah? And Google will give you something that gets you going. You might not hit the best response at the first type, at first search, but you'll learn to, tailor your search to exactly what you're looking for. Nowadays, online classes are everywhere. And I can't really tell you that there's one that's better than the other. I use a couple. I use Coursera. I use Udemy to upskill, but that's not enough, right? So a lot of the times, you want a real project. I lack in the real project exercise, but also I work for a company who could give me a real life project. So that's why maybe I'm lazy on let me get a data set from online to test my upskilling, right? But
Yeah.
again, Google will also give you,
I look like you're promoting Google. This is not an app for
access
Google,
to.
people.
I mean, it also will give you access to certain, materials that you can use to practice once you're done upskilling. Because upskilling is one, meaning you listen to somebody with that expertise tell you how you should do XYZ. And then the next step is go practice, right? And even for the practice, Google it, because Google will give you practice materials,
I mean, you ain't
right?
lying. You're not lying. You're not like, okay. So what gets you into spending time in data science? Why is Greg like secretly building something? Something we're all building something. Maybe we don't want to put it out there. So, but what can you tell me? Why is there interest and investment in this space for you?
Two things. Well, I said three, right? I'm curious. I'm an eternal curious. I always like to understand what's happening under the hood, and I'll explain it to you. A lot of times when data scientists they build a model, an algorithm, there's a lot of fine tuning inside of that algorithm that dictates how that algorithm should put out a prediction. And I'm curious to understand what's under the hood, to understand what is the logic you're using here to make that prediction,
Yeah.
right? And then there's a lot of math in there. There's a lot of, stats, probability, whatever. You name it, it's the same thing. And another one is, of course, personal, agenda to upskill, right? To make myself competitive enough in the market, making sure I'm useful to society. And then the third one is entrepreneurship, right? At some point, I'd like to, pick up put my big boy pants on and say, okay, that's it. Corporate world, let me try this. Let's see if I can be useful to society in another way by running my own company. And in that, what it would take, it will depend on what issues I'm trying to tackle. You can only tackle so many issues in the world. You can only choose a couple, or better yet, start with one and then see where it takes you. But I want to be able to be courageous enough to say I tried.
Man, you hit it right on. I think individuals might underestimate how powerful it is to take an issue in our community, in our society, and connect it to a technology solution. And it just becoming valuable, being able to sell the company or just delivering value to a community, I think that opportunity is so huge that I want to literally be on top of a building and just yell, especially with, for us being in communities that we grew up in, that we knew where the challenges are when it comes to healthcare, where the challenges are when it comes to education, access, all of these things. We've either lived it, we've seen it, and so we understand the problem at the core. And so it's just a matter of being able to identify that problem and connecting an analytic solution, an AI solution, and boom, you have a business. Boom, you're able to, measure what the value of the business is. Next thing you know, we're selling $1 million businesses. Anyways, you said something that kind of got the hairs on my back of my neck standing up. You said you like to look under the hood, okay? And a question that I'm always asking the leaders that I talk to is, who really is to blame when the AI technology that is intended to help the end consumer ends up hurting the end consumer? So me coming from a healthcare background, through sales, strategy, all of that, I see it quite often where I see it in the news, whatever. There's actually a hospital in New York right now that's under investigation because the AI solution they deployed into the marketplace basically negated the Black patient group, and they measured their level of sickness to not be on the same level as their white patients, to be specific. But when they went back and looked at it, it was completely wrong. And this is healthcare, so this could be a life or death situation when you're relying on a model that has been created to give you results to deliver health and well-being for your patients. So where in that under the hood can individuals be thinking about, this could be an opportunity for me, or leaders could be thinking about, this is where I need to be rethinking it. I've been doing it this way for X amount of years, or whatever it is. This is how I need to be rethinking it because the demographic of my patient is shifting. We all see the data. The next couple of decades, the higher percentage of I think consumers in America are going to be Hispanic. Like, those are facts that are there already. So yeah, what's your take on that?
I think it falls under the responsibility of the company who put out these algorithms, right? Because they are responsible for driving the culture of inclusion. And what I mean by driving the culture of inclusion, meaning if you are a company that serves a set of the world population, you better make sure that whatever product you put out there is inclusive of that population that you serve, right? So if you're in healthcare and you serve, this much of of the population, and you better make sure that you run some tests. So when that model, puts out a prediction or a recommendation, that it's including everybody that you serve or you meant to serve. So internally, you have to set the right committees to check those testings, to audit these performances, to make sure that the bias in those models are removed. And that's what's happening is bias. Bias is embedded into the data that you collect without you knowing it. And I would even call it unconscious bias that these data have. Now, we should be conscious enough to know that bias is most likely able to enter that data and enter the model when we build them, because that model uses that data to be able to predict or recommend or prescribe. So in that case, you have to constantly run tests. You have to have the committee inside of that organization who's in charge of checking in and out, running some A/B testings and readjusting to make sure that whoever you're meant to serve is being served.
By the way, I was checking your profile, and I wasn't sure which country you're originally from. So I'm Ghanaian born. That's the reason I'm asking, because when we talk about technology and innovation, I mean, the opportunity is endless. And so have you thought about it that way in terms of where your home country is and where the opportunity could lie as you build out the Greg brand?
Yeah, I'm from Haiti, so born and raised.
No way! Ça passe!
Nabule, Nabule. So see, you know your way around, huh? So that's good.
No, I just know my way around some, what's it called? Do we a Jojo? No.
Dewey Jojo.
Yes, I just know my way around all that whole plate. I know my way
All
around that.
right, all right, all right, all right. I got you. That's good. That's good. So you're on the right track right there. Um, so yeah, I was born and raised in Haiti. So I immigrated to the U.S. For college, And yeah, I do think about my country a lot in this sense. I know for sure today they don't have the infrastructure uh, to support things like technology. However, the you know we have the potential, right? It's a young, very young population, and we're strong in math, right? So the only thing now that's lacking is the infrastructure to support these young folks who have this potential in math. So that's pretty much it. The biggest effort is pretty much, um, putting down the infrastructure to help them flourish. And that requires, unfortunately, a lot of um, capital, a lot of effort, and also in these type of countries, the intervention of government, which most of the time is not the best. So sometimes you want to be able to drive those, you know, those innovations, those types of projects on a private at the private level. But when there are things that the government have to step in, it could slow things down sometimes. So, and because there isn't enough structure for the private companies to be protected if they take a chance with a country like Haiti, they don't take a chance to take it over by themselves. They say, oh, it's too risky. I'm not going to put some money on infrastructure there because if I lose it, the government won't cover me.
Right, right. A whole different ball game. I gotta push it a little bit because both countries, talking Ghana and Haiti, experienced colonialism to a level that we look today and it's like, wow, that actually did happen. And so when I think about today's era of technology, opportunity, and innovation, and we see a lot of power, companies, organizations going in knee deep. Because at the end of the day, these countries are still resource rich, right? There's no question about that. How do you think we being, having a sight to see the opportunity, or being interested to want to do something that generates that opportunity for our communities and whatnot, how can we go about not sitting back, right, and not seeing what happened, back 200 so years ago happen again in era of technology innovation? Do you get what I'm trying to say?
Uh-huh. Yeah, I think so.
Yes. How can we avoid that? This sense of new era colonization, if you may say.
Uh-huh. Yeah, so the way I understand that is, let's take advantage of the readily available technology that we have, which is communication systems, has done a pretty good job, accessing the remote places of this world. If you think about it today, what WhatsApp is doing, allowing people to communicate all across the globe. Let's leverage that. And social media itself could be a great channel for that too. A lot of times, people who are doing bad things or not, they don't like to be exposed. So if a country comes into another country, expose them, right? Put them on social media, right?
Out there.
So, leverage technology for that. In terms of technology itself, one of the fears that I have is countries who are developed are so advanced and they advance so fast that I feel like the developing countries or the third world countries will not have a chance. The gap will even widen itself.
Right.
So, in other words, I think there needs to be leaps and bounds these countries will have to do. And the way to do that is to leverage communication channels, online trainings, transfer of that knowledge needs to happen on the web to help them leap forward instead of just gradually progress like these developed countries did, right? They will have to get up to speed a little bit faster. Not that they will ever catch up with developed countries, but they need to go a little bit faster. And right now, internet infrastructure is well placed for that to allow that to happen. So we don't need. So nowadays, what I mean by that is nowadays a lot of universities across the world, like whether the developing countries are okay with making a partnership with a remote country, right? Making a partnership to, do pro bono programs to teach the young ones about certain technology and things like that. And that needs to be amplified nowadays to make sure that that transfer of knowledge happens. That's the least thing these countries who formerly colonized these others can do to pay back. You know, a lot of people are like, oh, they got to give me my money back. No, forget that. What about transfer of knowledge? I think to me that has the biggest, better value than anything else.
Wow, transfer of knowledge. Wow, this has been good. So, what are you looking forward to in 2021 or looking to invest more in come 2021 for yourself?
On a personal level, financial wise, you know, I like to do a little bit of a stock investing and things like that to see
I might
where
have to
that
hit you
goes.
up later
And then you
and teach
have
me a thing or two.
well, this is me learning again, just taking a bit of chance and things like that. And then another thing too is really continue to increase my network. Right, I do fairly well on LinkedIn, but I suck on the other social media. But I think LinkedIn is good enough in terms of what I'm looking for my career to gather a few folks and zoning in on what I want to solve ultimately for the world. You know, I know some big channels, some big things that humanity suffer from is energy storage or transportation and things like that. So healthcare, those things are the big buckets, and a lot of ideas can come out of those. And really zoning in onto what these are, and also not to forget me focusing on growing my career inside of Amazon. That's a big thing too. That's very important because I'm not looking to just say, oh, I'm leaving Amazon, because that I really want to make sure I have a solid track there. So focusing on understanding, where I work and how I can make an impact and help other people around me do a better job. And also follow the trends for AI. Where is this going? How are more companies adopting it nowadays? Who are going to be the big service providers inside of AI? Are we really going to start seeing a shift in jobs, right, destroyed by AI? Is that a true thing? And just like you say, who's responsible for an AI system that makes a mistake, right? So, where someone has lost his or her life, because of AI. Who's responsible, right? And another thing too is continuously, talk to people, like do things like this. You inviting me here and inspiring others to say, hey, I can do this too. I see Greg doing it, so there's no way I can't do it, right? So I want people to continue to say that, to be inspired, to be curious and learn more.
Awesome. Awesome. This is good. This is really good. Greg, thank you so much for taking time and joining me here over at the Rozy Effect. Are you digging my office space?
I'm digging it. I'm digging it. Very nice.
But yes, thank you. I really appreciate the time.
Thank you so much, Rosie.